товарищи, в условиях глобальной геополитической нестабильности представляется особенным терроризму и экстремизму, а также целенаправленную и эффективную работу по объединению.
Участникам 58-го заседания Совета руководителей органов безопасности и
мероприятие посвящено юбилейной дате 35-летию образования.
A telling example is the situation in Ukraine, where its European patrons have installed and continue to support a puppet regime. Under the false pretense of imminent EU accession, the country has been turned into a springboard for military and sabotage terrorist operations against Russia. In essence, it has become a testing ground for new types of weaponry, for training military systems in artificial intelligence, and for developing new forms and methods of warfare under a foreign flag. Under the close supervision of the West, Ukraine has become a major factor in destabilizing the situation across the Commonwealth. The actions of the Kyiv regime have resulted in the country's transformation into Europe's largest center for the smuggling of arms and ammunition. Ukrainian special services are using the territories of states bordering Russia to infiltrate saboteurs and means of terror into our country. They are recruiting mercenaries for the armed forces of Ukraine all over the world. They are involving migrant workers in terrorist and extremist activities. They are conducting a comprehensive campaign to influence the populations of our countries via the internet, including through an extensive network of so-called call centers. The scale of the threats emanating from Ukraine is clearly demonstrated by the results of joint operational work carried out by the FSB in collaboration with its Commonwealth partners. For instance, at the start of the year, in cooperation with the KGB of the Republic of Belarus, an attempt organized by Kyiv to smuggle more than 500 explosive devices into the Russian Federation for the purpose of carrying out terrorist attacks was thwarted. There are examples of such cooperation with other special services of CIS countries, but it is not yet appropriate to disclose the details. There is no doubt that the escalation of the Iranian conflict and the involvement of an increasing number of parties are leading to a deterioration in inter-religious and inter-ethnic relations, threatening to destabilize the entire Islamic world. The consequences of the destabilization of the situation in the Middle East will have a direct impact on the security of the Commonwealth countries. According to available data, Western intelligence services are continuing their attempts to use militant terrorists from Syria as a proxy force in the war against Iran. Among them are individuals from CIS countries who fought as part of Islamic State and other terrorist groups, and who later ended up in Syrian prisons. The militants are being transferred to specialized camps in Iraq. It is clear that such militant agents can and will be used not only in the Middle East, but also in their countries of origin. The situation in Afghanistan remains difficult. The Taliban government is managing to prevent the country from descending into civil war and territorial disintegration. They are taking the necessary measures to pull the economy out of crisis. However, these efforts are undermined by the armed clashes with Pakistan, which flare up periodically and divert the resources of the Afghan security forces away from combating internal threats. First and foremost, these include the ISIS affiliate Wilayat Khorasan, associated jihadist groups, and the anti-Taliban armed opposition, represented by organizations such as the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan and the Freedom Front of Afghanistan. With the active support of the British intelligence services, these forces continue their attempts to weaken the government in Kabul, seeking to expand the areas of the country not under Taliban control, particularly in the north. Using this region as a base, Western powers hope to subsequently influence the situation in the Central Asian republics in a way that suits their interests. The Wilayat Khorasan is currently actively recruiting militants from other terrorist structures, as well as supporters from among the citizens of Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, and migrant workers in Russia. Covert terrorist networks are being established on the territory of our countries. Channels for their logistical support are being formed, and terrorist attacks are being prepared. Earlier this year, the Russian FSB, in cooperation with their Tajik colleagues, identified and neutralized a terrorist cell planning high-profile attacks. Furthermore, in cooperation with the State Security Service of Uzbekistan, 5 terrorist attacks in various regions of the Russian Federation, including Moscow, were thwarted at the planning stage. Recently, Ukrainian organized crime groups have become involved in the production and transit of synthetic drugs. They remotely control drug laboratories in CIS states, with part of the profits being channeled towards recruiting perpetrators of terrorist attacks in Russia and purchasing weapons. Last year alone, Russian security agencies, with the active participation of their partners, eliminated nearly 170 drug laboratories across the CIS. 9 tons of synthetic drugs were seized. This is yet another significant result of our joint efforts. The subversive activities of Western non-profit organizations continue to pose a direct threat to our countries. In this area, we are seeing increasing activity on the part of NGOs and foundations linked to the British Secret Services. Among London's primary objectives are working with the media, falsifying history, promoting national chauvinism, and pushing a gender and LGBT agenda that undermines the spiritual and moral values shared by our peoples. Exchange programs in the fields of education and public administration are being actively promoted, with the aim of nurturing a new generation of national elites oriented towards the implementation of Western strategic objectives to the detriment of the interests and security of the Commonwealth countries. According to available information, the Western intelligence community is behind programs to establish a network of digital laboratories across the Commonwealth, whose tasks include collecting and analyzing typical behavioral profiles of the population using artificial intelligence technologies, identifying points of tension in society, and modeling social reactions to various external factors, including the actions of the authorities. In effect, this involves the introduction within the CIS of tools designed to manipulate the moods and behavior of citizens, taking into account the specific characteristics of each state. Reliance on Western technology platforms creates significant vulnerabilities to cyber attacks by the intelligence services of leading NATO countries and their allies. A clear warning sign is the recent elimination of senior Iranian officials by the U.S.-Israeli alliance. The victims' locations were identified, in part, through software backdoors in Tehran's video surveillance systems. NATO is continuing its long-term program to develop targeted biological weapons in the Asia-Pacific region, Africa, and Latin America. Biological laboratories are also operating in the CIS countries. At the same time, field trials and incidents involving pathogen leaks from these facilities are being attributed to natural causes. A great deal of evidence of such activities has been gathered by our armed forces during the special military operation in Ukraine. Threats are mounting on many fronts: international terrorism, political and religious extremism, organized crime and drug trafficking, cyber attacks, and information warfare. The West is seeking to block integration processes, undermine the CIS countries from within, make the peoples forget their shared history, and set them against one another. To establish its dominance here, just as it has done in the countries I have mentioned, it is therefore crucial to assess the situation objectively and to jointly defend the interests of the Commonwealth states, which are far more closely intertwined than in their relations with any external players.